Hello, and welcome to the Divine Darkness podcast, where we are going to walk towards the light together, bringing in more awareness, opening our abilities, and discussing all different realms of spirituality. Take a seat, open your heart, and get ready for this energetic shift to happen. Of course, the afterlife is something that everybody questions. Everybody is curious about, and there's so many different types of opinions and different perspectives. And I feel that in this topic, it's definitely from experience, in my opinion. We can read and learn about it, but it's really what resonates with you in your life when you talk and discernment of the afterlife. Because, there's certain theories and topics that I never related to. And then through my experience, now I can see that perspective. So, of course, being a medium at a young age in my whole life, I feel like I've always been connected with the afterlife, and especially in the dream state, I'm just constantly in that. So for most of the listeners that experience those connections could probably relate to having a deeper knowing through experience, through what we're told, what we're shown, what we feel, what we see. And that's probably why at a young age, I never followed like anyone in the Catholic Church. Like my family was Catholic, so I just never followed it, never felt it because it didn't feel right to me to follow something that I didn't know knowledge on. So, meaning experience on. So, I just took that in my own state. And I would say probably around like when I was like 18 is when I really started thinking and deeper knowing of what is this really? What is it? Because I definitely did not believe in, heaven or hell and that, you're going to all this fear-based stuff. I didn't believe that. And so I knew I'm like, but what is it? Because as I was throughout my life experiencing mediumship connections, they would show me a way peaceful, more state than what we experience even here. So like, how could I not believe that they were at peace from what I've been shown? So yeah, can
All
dive into
right.
other questions or maybe thoughts that would come through.
I think my question is, so I've only been doing mediumship for less than almost a year now. It's been almost a year that I've really been actively practicing it. Um, and I guess maybe the listeners want to know what exactly happens when you cross over, like that moment when your soul decides to leave. What do you think is kind of the first things that happen?
Well, every soul is different. That's the first off thing is there'll be souls that, depending on how they cross over, that affects. So if somebody is abruptly leaving this planet, it's going to be confusion. They're going to be a little in this place of what's happening. They do. Now, that doesn't mean they stay that way. It doesn't mean that they don't get the opportunity to go to the light. Like we all have that opportunity. I think it just depends on their transition. And so usually people that are terminally ill, they have that chance to devote to like acceptance and to have that process consciously. So it's not abrupt.
They
There's
have a longer time to accept
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So working with elderly and having them in that process, like you see a lot of people that are experiencing like more of a peaceful state, and from witnessing it consciously but also witnessing it in what as a medium of what they show me, it does always show me this light form connection of like walk, like what you would see in near life death experience of what they describe to me. That's what I they're graded. It's a light energy source. And of course the review, of course all of that, but I feel like the guides are a big impact, obviously, because they're the ones assisting the soul to make sure that they're comforted, make sure that they're not fearful, make sure that they, maybe they need to look down and see what just happened to give that soul the realization of what just happened so then they can process it and move to the next phase. And so that's what I've seen and what I believe um, as far as like the transition. So I think that it depends for sure.
In my experience, when my grandmother, she was getting close to the end before I kind of really realized it, she was speaking to my grandfather, who had passed 10, 15 years prior. Um, and, my mom and my aunt, they're just like, she's always talking to Dada. And I was like,
Mhm.
that's strange. Must be the medication. Was not the medication. So I think for sure, like old, past family members, even pets, I think will come over and assist a soul who's slowly transitioning to bring them peace, give them more understanding as to what's about to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing I was shown too is through with my experience of both of my cousins actually passing. One passed, and then like maybe 10 years later, his brother passed. And so the first one passed, and he showed me when it was his brother's time to pass. That was like 10 years later, or however long span. He came to me and told me he was coming. He opened a door. It was full of light, and he walked through it, and he took his brother's hand and brought him over. Well, 3 days later, he passed. So he showed me as a soul, as a spirit coming to assist his brother before it even really actually physically happened. Just like you said, the elderly or whoever that is actively dying, they see, they feel, they experience that it's real, it's not fake, and um, that was something that I was never experienced before, which I realized the correlation and what it meant. And then, my grandmother recently that just passed, she was completely fine. She was 100 and so completely fine. And then January 1st hit, she started hallucinating. And everyone was like, oh, no, that's not there. And I'm like, guys, you need to not tell her that because it is. It is there. She is aware. She is seeing this. And, she was seeing a lot of different things. And what was interesting is she was seeing, we never had animals or cats. She didn't like animals. She didn't like cats, especially. And she kept on saying right before the day before she passed, roughly, it was like she kept on seeing cats all around her. And so that is a protection, but also against evil too in the afterlife, because, you could have fear-based things. You can have energies that are not well, that are, kind of feeding off of you. And so I do believe the cats assisted her because she was not fearful, which was interesting. So that was something that was different for me. I've never heard anyone talking about cats. Usually it's animals that they've seen or that they had. Um, but yeah, and so I guess the spiritual meaning of that is, especially Egyptians believe that as well, which I thought was really
Yeah,
beautiful.
cats are definitely half in, half out of the spiritual world, which I think I didn't have cats for a long time because I've always been with people who are allergic, and I finally got cats, and it's just like I feel like every spiritual witchy person just like needs a cat if they can have it
Yeah.
because so much, and like just their purring heals you. Like when I'm upset, my cats will come like meowing at my door to let me in, let me in, like
Yeah,
and they're just so healing, and it's
they
just really.
are. Yeah, I'm not able to have cats, unfortunately. My daughter is obsessed. We actually go to the cat cafe often so we can just play with cats. She's obsessed. She's definitely a little energy healer and she knows that potential of them. And we have a dog, so I'm definitely a dog lover. But I think the spiritual meaning though of that was pretty interesting and profound. So again, I think it all depends on the soul and the ascension of the soul and how their process looks after in the afterlife. But every so often, I just think that each mediumship reading I do when they show me different transitions, it really depends. There
For
is
sure.
no one size fits all. Like it just, um, yeah,
Yeah, and that's kind of the conclusion I've come to because, I've seen ghosts and I've experienced ghosts and I've known like everyone crosses over. And I've always tried to be like, well, if that always happens, then how do spirits get stuck here? What causes that? And it's usually something traumatic like a murder or whatever. And I've always found that really interesting. Um, yeah, and I want to know like what do you feel like is your experience with people who have passed more traumatically?
Um, I personally think that the energy that you're saying, like when you see a ghost or feel something or like a negative entity or energy, I personally think that and feel that that energy comes from a source of experience that created it. So I don't necessarily believe that it's the necessarily the soul. I think that it's an experience energy form
That's
because
kind of the
energy,
same thing I feel about. It's more like
yeah.
a stamp.
Yeah. So like if you go to a certain place that's very spiritually connected to like murders or war or whatever, you'll notice that the energy of that is picked up even more heavily because people come there intentionally with the energy to amplify it. So that's why certain places in the world are more haunted, but it's not to me, that's an energy frequency that we're developing, creating. Just like when we have a traumatic experience, wherever that may be, we can still feel that trauma when we go to that place and that energy and that space. It's because to me, it's not necessarily the soul, it's the energy that was created and formatted there. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yes. And a lot of people I've heard experience like it would be like the spirit doesn't even realize that other people are there because it's kind of more like a tape just replaying over and over, not really interacting with other people.
Mhm. Yeah. But, that doesn't mean that there are not energies of spirits that don't attach. That doesn't mean that it's not possible and that it doesn't happen because it definitely has happened to me before. But again, I went into a place that had an energy from an experience of this person that lived there. And so that woman the place that I walked into was explaining it and talking about it and feeding it. And so everyone that was an empath would go there that would feel this heavy, dense energy. Well, because she was creating it even more. So that spirit was like, I just want to probably leave. I want to go to see the light, but you keep bringing it up. You keep formatting it and creating it. So that's why energy clearings, clearings, and really cutting cords, attachments, all that hooks, all that energy work is so important because we do manifest it. And I
Definitely.
that's so I think it's not necessarily one size again fits all. I think there's so many different avenues to that.
Yeah, and I think with like, poltergeist and stuff, that's literally like the manifestation of negative energy that just becomes external and starts reacting to all that intensity. Because I think a lot of people, I did a lot of research in elementary school. I did a whole paper on the paranormal. Um, I did like poltergeist, demons, ghosts, and like all the differences between them. And yeah, when I don't know how you feel about like demons particularly, because my definition and my experience is kind of transformed, of course, throughout my life. And I feel like they are negative spirits that feed off of negative energy and they just get more intense and more intense the more negative energy that's brought in. That has been my experience.
And that's exactly what I'm saying and speaking about because, like I said, when you go to a haunted place or when you go somewhere that has high energy and they do paranormal activity and they create it there, I believe that the energy is feeding off of it. I believe that the fear-based things are feeding off of it. So again, you could say the same about someone that is constantly fear-based, constantly fear and scared and worried. They're literally manifesting an energy of that source, and an entity and an energy is going to create and attach to that, and you're going to live with that subconsciously, consciously, and it doesn't go away. It manifests into illness, etc. So I just feel like that's the same thing for sure. Yeah, I agree with you. So call it a demon, call it an energy, discarnate energy, call it a negative energy, whatever you call it. At the end of the day, it's that. So.
What can you talk about the life review, kind of maybe your experience or what people who have passed on who have kind of spoke on that to you?
Yeah, I'm definitely still feeling like I don't get a lot of readings where there are spirits that want to dive into that. I do feel like I'm still wanting to learn. So I'm hoping that like the next chapter in my readings and in my spirit connection, that will be more open to divulge. It's almost like when you open the doors each year as a medium, you learn more and more. And I feel like last year was all about learning and seeing the transition of like, show me what you've experienced in your transition. And it was just this open flooding gates of just showing every spirit was showing me. And that was something I didn't experience the year before. So I thought that that was really cool. And now I'm open to like, okay, now I'm curious of the life review. Now I want to know. So I feel that it's going to show me soon more and more of that. But personally, what I intuitively feel, I feel that everyone has that opportunity, that chance, and you do reflect and do get to see those, so to speak, moments of that were impacting you that have shifted your life for the good or bad, whatever way. I do feel you get to see in that reflection. And I do feel like you see this remorse. For example, I'll just give you an example. I feel my grandmother was very remorseful of a certain situation when she crossed over immediately. And I feel that her apology for her son, my father, was immediate. Like it was instant. There was no debating. There was no if, ands, buts. So I do feel like that 3D dense energy of ego is removed, and that can help instantly heal a spirit and any loved one. So I do feel like that review right there is just showing the transition and the change of, hey, let's self-reflect. It's almost like literally like what we do in December and January, self-reflect. It's almost like, well, when we transition in that review, I would say, let's call it a self-reflect. Let's call it a soul reflect, because we're going to be doing a timeline here from the beginning till the end. What's reflecting, what was big impacts, what are things that, affected other people's lifetime in this world too, because it's not just about us when we cross over. And it's about our soul contracts with others. It's about our soul ties and our bonds and our relationships and our fear that we carried or hurt or gave to other people, or anger or love. What did you do good? What did what was your soul mission? Did you complete it? There's so much that that's how I feel in the afterlife of what it is.
Yeah, and I've had similar experience with connecting with spirits that have passed closer to when I'm speaking to them versus ones that have been passed way longer. Like ones that I've spoken to have been past like a year or two. Like I still feel like there's some remorse. There's still like some wanting to apologize and make amends to their family members. And there's still like a healing process versus someone who, you know, like I speak to like my dada and there's nothing. He's just like pure light, pure, there's nothing that needs resolved. He's just good. And I think it's really interesting. Um I don't know. My experience is we all go to the light and we're all like held in this light for a healing period, however long it takes for that soul. Because I feel like some people need longer than others, just depending on, like you said, what happened in their life. And yeah, that's pretty much the same thing I've experienced as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I totally agree. So,
Okay, so I was listening to I think it was Dolores Cannon maybe, and I think she was speaking about people like who did really terrible things in this life, going back to the whole heaven and hell concept, like Hitler. Does he get to go to the light? Does he get to be forgiven? There's kind of that ego injustice kind of feeling in this life, like people who did really bad things, what happens to them?
so in my perspective, because, technically no one knows, but in my perspective, I feel that there's a good show or a good movie that I want to just say and start off before I say any of this is The Shack. Um,
I've seen that one.
you have not? Okay. So the movie The Shack will put your perspective in a different lens for sure, because at the end of the day, you know, good, bad, everything that we've done, we still have that forgiveness as a soul. And that is something that's extremely important for sure in this lifetime. Um, but I do believe that it's hard, because I do believe that everyone gets a piece of that like source, right? That light. I do believe that they have that review, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be an instant, you know, transition or an instant, maybe like you said, maybe very well could take a longer time. But I feel though too, when there's a dense energy like that, like what you're saying, as far as someone that's awful and extreme, um, I do believe that their life could continuously go in a cycle until there's some type of soul growth. I do feel that certain things can be even intervened, meaning when they cross over, maybe they need some type of different assistance. Maybe there's something going on that they can assist better on and better where. Maybe there's something in the planet that they need to go to instead of the place they just incarnated. I'm just, speaking off of my intuition on that aspect because I do feel that there is opportunities given, but not everyone's going to take them as well. Not every soul is going to. But I do feel like it might take a magnitude of lifetimes for this person soul to grasp some type of wrong that has been incarnated over and over again. And I do feel that that is the role of us light workers to be more of, because when we have more of, their life is also less dense and affected. So it's like this cycle, right? We are light workers. We want to be here for the earth and for this planet and every soul and human and humanity. So I feel like the more we grow and collectively, I do feel that the less or the easier it is for these types of souls to see when they cross over. Does that make
Sure.
sense?
Yeah. I think going back to Hitler specifically, I think what I read or listened to was people like that are held in like a further location, kind of like in a different, I guess, realm. I don't know what you want to call it, but they are held there more intensely and they're not given the opportunity to reincarnate until that their soul has processed and learned lessons in that holding space. And it's kind of
Interesting.
it's a healing space, but it's a different healing space than say like your grandma's healing space, if that makes sense.
And that's what I kind of meant as far as it takes a little longer for their soul to process all of it. And I do feel like that is absolutely. Um, the only kind of thing that I feel is iffy on my part is in that sense and in that case, then I just feel like when that seems interesting to me, actually, I'd have to do a little more diving into that just because I feel like then just because so many people incarnate here that are not, that have bad intention, right? There is a lot of bad in this world, right? There's a lot of good. So I'm like, well, then how good is this cleansing healing space, right? That makes me think. That's why I'm like, is it just incarnations of souls and then finally, eventually they meet the certain soul or earth angel or certain person or certain dense energy is gone, So that to me, I still almost feel like it's necessarily not up to the afterlife to clean up someone's soul here. Does that make sense?
Definitely, for sure.
So I'm kind of like, I'd have to dive more deeper into that because I feel like yes, the soul growth afterlife is helpful in healing and it's beautiful and that is a possibility, absolutely, because of obviously a source. But I also am like, wait, but we're here incarnating to learn lessons. And I feel that's a soul responsibility. So it's almost like, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I've heard Earth kind of compared to like a master class. Like there's easier places to incarnate. And so when we incarnate here, it's to learn hard lessons, is to go through hard things. And I think every soul takes longer than others. Like I know I've been around a long time. I've had a lot of lives to learn a lot of lessons. But just from what I've felt like, I feel like I've reincarnated quicker as the years have gone by, if that makes sense. Like I feel like my last past life, I probably passed in the 80s and then I reincarnated in the early 90s. And I feel like there was probably longer spaces in between lives previous to that.
Yeah, because typically it's long. Yeah, typically the process of that is extremely long. So, like, for example, um, a lot of people will ask if like, oh, is my grandfather incarnated into my son or someone? And your son might be showing special things in regards to him, but personally, I think it's because the spirit of the child is seeing the spirit and hearing the spirit. Does that make sense? It's not necessarily the grandfather incarnating. I feel like it's takes so long that it's not in this necessarily generation.
for sure.
So I personally don't like believe that like, if I pass tomorrow, I'm going to reincarnate into my daughter's child. I feel like it's going to be generations and century, I don't know. Again, I don't have the answers. I am just in medium, intuitive, just working off of my perspective. And I'm someone too that learns from experience, but I love hearing other people's experience. And yeah, I just think there's never any right or wrong answer. It's just what resonates with you. Again, for anyone listening that doesn't feel, or that feels resonated, doesn't, it's not, no one knows more than anyone else. We're just here all learning together. So,
I guess because I know you did a recent kind of like past life regression, and I was really curious to hear about that and what you experienced.
oh yeah. So this is I went into this shamanic journey with someone that's a close healer of mine, and my intention was for a while to clear some of my blocks that I was going in, and especially my solar plexus. I've had some physical ailments that I was going on this year. It's been really interesting. So I've been in the definite physical energy. So I'm like, okay, let's go into this, see what spirit has to show me. And I was learning a lot on my past lives of why I was experiencing a lot of physical pain in my abdomen. Like, I all recently was diagnosed with lupus, and then I have like bad stomach pain, like certain foods I have like allergic reaction to all of a sudden, and just very sensitive to foods. Like, completely had to change my whole life this year or the past 2 years. And I just wanted to get to the bottom of it. So, went to past life and um my I was shown one, two, so three different past lives, and they were all showing me certain energies of situations where I was murdered in my abdomen, like stabbed. I was a knight one day, like it just showed me flashing before my eyes of like being a knight protecting someone, and I was stabbed in my abdomen. And what I'll show you something or tell you something that's interesting after that. And then I was a um this one was interesting. This woman was like in the 1800s. I've been seeing her for a long time and I didn't understand. Native Americans were part of it as well. And she was stabbed by an arrow. And she had a lot of rage, anger. This was a lot of emotions that I've released this year. Um, and I feel that it was from that past life of seeing her family murdered, etc. And then I was all of a sudden in this majestic ocean, and I was a whale being stabbed. What is it called? Speared. And is that what is it called?
Yes, being speared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Harpoon.
forgot. Harpoon. Yeah, there it goes. That's what it was. And I woke up with a profound feeling of like understanding why I have these feelings in my abdomen and why I have a particular birthmark that is generation. My mother has it, my daughter has it, and I have it. Um, and I just was like, this is interesting. What does these birthmarks have to do with this? And come to find out, it makes perfect sense because of obviously what I was shown. And I just felt at that moment I released a lot of heavy, dense energy from my past experiences that I went through. And, I've been feeling a lot lighter, a lot better, and just have more clarity on my physical ailment and just in general in my body. And I've had the answers finally for it. And I haven't been suffering like I was. Like, I have not had an episode or any type of issues since then, since what was it, in like September, October, roughly. Um, so thankfully it has definitely helped and healed. But um, yeah, so I think that was really profound for me.
Cool. How do you think all of your birthmarks are connected? Is it from that experience, or is it like y'all experiencing similar things in different
I think
lives?
it was definitely let's back up, I guess. So prior to the hypnosis and the journey that I went on, I was doing a lot of ancestral clearings with my mother's side of the family. Um, and I feel that I was kind of going in the sense of like breaking a lot of generational things that my mother was experiencing that I carried and so on, even before her, with her father, my grandfather. And so I personally believe that it was generational things that we've carried because that's birthmarks in past lives. And I was unfamiliar of that. Um, and so I do feel like that had something to do with breaking a generational curse. Like I do. And I hope that being said and being forward that maybe what my daughter experienced in her past life or my mother experienced in her past life, or et cetera, maybe that it's broken just from being in that state of what I experienced. Maybe I am the one that's breaking it, because I'm bringing this awareness in out of my whole generation. Like no one before me did that, obviously, right? Because unless it was, I mean, before we could even imagine, probably. So yeah, I do believe that it has a correlation to the three of us.
That's so cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Because every time I do like a past life, I did it a while ago too, a profound one. I feel like it always correlates to my child, to my children, both of them. They
Yeah.
experience things after. So I do feel that because my first hypnosis that I had experienced and what I went through was so profound in my generation line, like my children were showing me signs that were so evident and like, I mean, wild that I'm like, this is real breaking patterns. They're aware of what I went through without even me saying anything. Like, for example, my son, the past life that I experienced, my son was saying like randomly, I came home from Sedona and I went through this profound healing, and my son was saying, "Oh yeah, my new animal is called, his name's Billy and he's from Africa." And I was like, "Wait, what?" Because the man in my past life that I had a contract with was named Billy and he was 1800s and lived in Africa and I was the slave, and so that was really wild. He still talks about his name is Billy, he says. So that blew my mind. And then I was connecting with ancient, like Arcturians, and going in the state of realizing where I felt at home, the most peace and all this stuff. And then I come home, and my daughter's like fascinated with having dreams about aliens. So, like,
How?
wow, yeah. And it was just more and more and more and more. So, starseed children for sure is a whole nother topic, ball game, as you know. But I think it's just gives you a little more confirmation from spirit that you're doing the right thing in your life when you're working on your soul, and your children validate it for you without even having to.
Definitely, for sure. I guess because my experience with aliens is very limited, and I feel like yours is more, you have more experience. And so I kind of, I'm curious of how you feel that incorporates with like reincarnating on Earth versus being on different planets.
Yeah, so I believe and feel just from my experience, what the Arcturian showed me in my past life is that my mission, because I asked them, my mission here was to help Earth heal, help heal Earth. And it was many others experience that, as you know, with Dolores Cannon and et cetera. So I believe that the galactic teams are here to assist, not every single one, but most of them are here to assist and help. And I do believe that the incarnation of any galactic beings that are here are coming to help humanity. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because, I feel similar, close to like Palladian energy. But it kind of is interesting because it kind of conflicts with how I feel with my other past lives. And I'm like, how does this like, how are they all connected?
Well, so for example, just to give you a perspective, my past life with my galactic team was showing me a different planet. So like but my past life of my, being enslaved and knowing Billy and being involved with someone that I shouldn't have been and whatever. But that was planet Earth in Africa. So like, there's different places and pit stops, so to speak. So a lot of my past lives though were shown here in the earth. But I will say the whale experience, I don't know where that was. It was
Yeah.
definitely majestic. So I don't know where that was.
Yeah, because I've heard, this is just what I've heard someone's opinion is that, human souls, they don't reincarnate as animals. Those are kind of like separate souls. Like animals' spirits are different than our spirits.
I agree.
And so when you said that, I was like, that's very interesting that you felt you were a whale in a
Mhm.
past life, because that
I
kind of fits with what I feel on this plane.
I agree, and that's why I said I don't know where that planet was because I
Yeah.
do agree with you on that. And I don't know what stabbed me. Like I don't know what harped me or I didn't see. I just felt and heard that, whale whimper, if you can imagine, right? That loud, and felt it, the motion, but I don't know where. That's really interesting. To tell you the truth, never even really looked into that or asked about it. I just kind of took everything and integrated it. But yeah, that is fascinating. And now that we're talking about it, that's another thing too with hypnosis or any past lives or anything with the afterlife. The more you talk about it, the more you uncover so many other things, right? Other realizations. And it's always so important to talk. If you guys do hypnotherapy, it's always so important to talk about it after, share your story after so you can integrate it with others too. It's really important. Hypnotherapy is very healing and powerful. And it's definitely, it can be isolating because most people don't want to share, but it's such a beautiful healing tool. And it's important to share when you're experiencing stuff like that.
Sure. I've never had a professional hypnosis. I've accidentally self-hypnosed myself a couple times. The first time was unintentional, and I was in the bath and I had my eyes closed and there was like my candles flickering, and I was just like kind of like doing this motion with my hand in the water, and then suddenly I was just propelled to what
Mhm.
I one of my first lives on this earth, or kind of maybe not the first, but definitely where I guess you would say bad karma started, where my biggest lesson really started. And I feel like in a lot of my lives, it's been so in that life, my partner, my person was murdered. And I kind of went crazy and took vengeance on everyone for it. And then I was kind of propelled through a bunch of different lives, and I was shown losing this person, trying to get revenge, trying to save this person over and over and over. And the most recent life I saw, it was trying to save this person again, but instead of, being vengeful, it was extremely self-sacrificing. It was giving up all my needs, all my wants to try and heal and save this person, which you can't do. You can't save people. You can give them the tools to save people themselves, but you can't actually save a person if they don't want to be saved, if they don't want to do the work. And so I thought that was really interesting because it also coincides with very similar themes in this life that I'm experiencing. Because I've always been kind of like Captain Save-A-Ho. Like, I love to help people. I love to try and heal people, to rescue people. And it's been a big learning lesson that I cannot rescue people, that I have to stop putting myself at a disadvantage, hurting myself in order to try and heal and protect other people. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
That's definitely a big karmic lesson that I'm
I
learning.
I was just going to say that's typically a lesson that you need to be,
Definitely.
experience to in life because when you're constantly trying, of course, as you know, to fix someone, it's usually what is it that it's a void, right? Or some type of lesson that you need to kind of face and surface. So that's beautiful. I think too, there was I just as you were talking, I just got lost in translation. But there was another thing I was going to bring up. I guess if we talk more, I'll think of it, but I can't remember now. Oh
I
gosh.
oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I remember a while back we were discussing like soul fragments, and we were kind of talking about the idea of, can your soul be reincarnated into someone else while your other part of your soul is still on Earth? And I was kind of wondering, how you felt about that, if you thought about that anymore, any conclusions you've come to with that.
You're saying if you were incarnated and
Kind of like you were discussing before, like, oh, is my child my dad reincarnated, or, kind
okay.
of things like that. if your soul can be fragmented, because we have a higher self that
Mhm,
is
mhm.
part of our soul, but it's not here on earth. So is it possible, do you think that we could have different lives, different parts of our soul in different places or timelines, or even in the same timeline, but separated?
I I do. I believe that I do. I believe that are multidimensional beings for sure, and I think that is possible, but I don't think it's everyone, right? I think it's very limited to a certain type of soul, a certain type of ascension of that soul. I think that it depends. But I don't feel it's often. So that's why I'm like, that's a custom. I feel like that's a very unique, so to speak, thing.
For sure. Um,
Yeah.
I guess my other question, because I have my own beliefs, like when your grandma passes over, not everyone necessarily becomes like a guide for you, so to say.
Okay,
Um,
that's what I was going to bring up.
should discuss like the differences between your ancestors, your
Yeah.
guides, your spirit
That's what
team.
I was. Okay, yeah, you just brought it up. That's what it was. So what I was going to say is what I've experienced as far as transitions to what they've shown me as well is their ascension. And that's what it was. So for example, I was talking about this the other day, but there was a loved one that I knew that crossed over, and he's always had a beautiful heart. He just was an addict and had struggled in this lifetime. So when he crossed over, and every time I see him and I see him now, I mean, he is the lightest, purest being. Like he's shown me his transition of who he was and his sorrow. And then I slowly over the years started seeing him turning into a light being, like this almost, so to speak, angelic being. So now, and the wildest thing is he has these answers that are just so unique that I just am like, he's ascended for sure. Like he is in the light, he is full of pure assistance. He just has this being about him that I know that he's not just lingering and hanging out. He's ascended. Like he is this angelic being. Um and so I feel like with him, he's shown me that. Now, not often is that happening, but I do feel like some are like, oh, I'm doing this, or I'm doing this, or I'm so busy. Like, for example, my other grandmother that passed away 20 years ago, and I'm just using experiences right now of my own loved ones, not necessarily what I experienced with readings, but I think it's because I don't see them I'm not channeling them all the time. This is from my perspective of what I've seen and channeled from these loved ones over timeline, over years. But for example, my grandmother 20 years ago, she passed and was just always so quiet, but yet busy. I don't know how else to put it. It's like she comes when she's available, is what I feel. You know, it's not all the time, but she's coming when she's available because I do feel like she's doing so much other stuff. My aunt, for example, if I ask, she comes often. And she's someone that is assisting. I feel she's someone that is assisting like this witch energy, if that makes sense. Like she's very like spiritual. She's very empathetic. So not saying she's a spirit guide, but I'm saying that she's very angelic and in a sense of that personal soul growth. So whether she's ascending in another, atmosphere, living in another planet, wherever, I do feel like they're multi-dimensional from what I've experienced going in different atmospheres, different layers, realms, whatever you want to call it, and experiencing that. So for sure, I do feel like that. I feel like there's many of my loved ones that I could see that for. Um, because to me, if they're constantly not quick accessible. I feel like they're so sparse, if that makes sense. Like they're so dense and busy that they're doing so much more. Where the other ones that are a little more quicker and dense, I feel like maybe they're not so spread out, not so much everywhere, if that makes sense.
What do you mean by busy?
So when I mean busy, like maybe they're living multiple versions and they're over here doing multiple versions, or maybe they're assisting in the afterlife crossing over. Who knows? Maybe they're assisting more souls that they assisted in that are like crossing over, right? Because we have to remember too, like if it is a loved one, that loved one could also be experiencing other loved ones crossing over that not are just in my life, right? If we're multi-dimensional beings. So that's what I mean by busy is like that they could be doing so much because we do have to remember obviously spirit guides assist us when we're in our when we first transition and cross over, so do our loved ones and all of that. And it's like, well, that could be her mission. I don't know. I just feel like, we all have missions when we dream. We all have a mission when we incarnate here, like our soul ascension and mission in the afterlife. I do believe that. I feel that.
Definitely.
What are your thoughts on that? Because
So
I feel,
my experience, I had a really unique one that I hadn't experienced before. So usually when I tap into someone whose loved one has passed over, it's very they feel very human in a sense. But there was one person I spoke to, he had a completely different vibe to him. And he even had like this bright white light behind his head. And I was like, what is that about? And I was like, maybe it's because he passed younger. And I was like, no, I've spoken with people who've passed around his age and they didn't have that. They were just human. And he had this just Christ-like energy to him. Like that's the only thing I could explain. It was just very Christ-like, very pure. Um, and he passed kind of traumatically very quickly. And I was like, I was asking him to assist a friend of mine in some troubles, and he was like, what do you think I've been doing? And I was like, what do you mean by that? He's like, well, you know, he had ascended to be more of a spiritual guide. So he had chosen not to, reincarnate or, kind of stay in more of the ancestral family friend kind of energy. He chose to go into more of a spiritual guide role for that friend to guide them, to keep them safe, to protect them. Um, because they had such a close bond on this life that he knew he had to be a guide for him on that side, if that makes sense.
yeah. No, I get that. I agree. I totally see that for sure. And that's something that I say often is that most of the time our loved ones that struggle here, that cross over, are assisting us easily in the afterlife better than they could ever here in the physical. And like I truly believe that about the loved one that I was just talking about that has that shows me this angelic kind of has the answer. I do believe that because there was so many blocks, so many things that they couldn't get through to in this energy, in this dense energy. So I do feel the same as, this is probably like as like someone that takes their own life, or someone that does something like that to end. I do feel the same, that's another topic, but I do feel like they still get to go into the light, they're not stuck, they're not suffering. Like, um, I don't believe that. So just to kind of throw that in there, but Um, yeah, I think everyone is so customized, so unique in each reading and so unique. And just know that like our loved ones, when they cross over, they don't feel pain, they're not suffering. It's almost like their outer body experience when they do, even in impact, even in something that's abrupt. So they're not actually feeling this physical. I will share when my grandmother passed recently, she took her last breath as she was taking her last breath. Before, my sisters and I were doing healings on her, and I was telling her there's nothing to fear, let go. You can go to the light. You're protected and safe. And when we did that and said that, she took out a yelp. And so one of my sisters thought it was a little like she was scared or that she was scared and in pain. And I'm like, it's the complete opposite. She actually let go of the pain. So I just wanted to let anyone know that is listening. It's definitely in a space of freedom. Like,
And I see people all the time are like, they'll be speaking to a psychic, like, oh, tell my mom I love them, tell grandma I love them. And I'm like, baby, you don't need the psychic to do that.
yeah,
You say that. They're always there. They hear you, call them. If you think about them, that means they're close to you. They're listening. They're there for you.
yeah, absolutely. Yep, absolutely. It's, grief is going to come in waves, but as long as you have that connection and know that you're here and your mission is still going to go on and that your intention and your contract and your soul ties with your family, I feel that really does help too, the grief stage and process of remembering why you're here. And it does help because you can call on your guides, your loved ones and your guides to assist you in those moments. And that's what they're there for, you know.
Sure. And I think, when my grandmother passed, I took it extremely hard. And I was really angry because I couldn't connect with her. And I was like, I've connected with spirits before. Like, why aren't you talking to me? And I was angry with her. I was like, where are you? And then
Mm,
I realized that it was actually my grief, me not processing that trauma that was keeping me from being able to connect with her.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, because it comes from the heart space of clarity. It comes from that mind state of clarity and it has to come from a space of belief and trust. And I think when we go at it with, I need to see this and I need to hear this in order to believe and trust, that's really hard for spirit. And it's easy for us to look at it in the
Kind of
3D.
what I was doing. I was like, do this, show me this. And I wanted it like immediately.
Mm.
And then it didn't, it never happened. And so I was like, you're not listening to me. But really,
Yeah.
I needed to get more quiet. I needed to get more peaceful. I needed to be patient. The first time I asked her to send me a sign, it took like 2 weeks. Second time I asked her, took 1 week, and then it started like I would ask her, I like to go on my walks and I'll just like ask like, hey, show me this. And then, it was like 30 minutes later, immediately saw the sign. And it was a very specific sign. She had been showing me sunflowers for a while. And I do this walk almost every day. I see everything, I look at everything. And I was like, show me sunflowers on this walk if you're listening. And then I started on my walk and I was going through the same spot that I always look at. And there was a sunflower growing, and there had never been a sunflower there before. And I was like, that's wild.
I love that so much. I think with this being said, with maybe we can talk about a whole nother section on spirit signs, synchronicities, and how to connect with your loved ones in spirit. I think that would be the next podcast. I think would be opening with that would be really helpful for the listeners, especially with discussing in the afterlife first. I think how to connect and all that is synchronicities that we experience are just very important, right? Because also too, like we have to remember our imagination can't restrict us. And I think when we're in that space, that's really when we start to see the signs and letting go of that expectation of how it should look, but trusting that it's going to be there and that it's going to be able to experience it. I think that was something that really helped me in my synchronicities and my spirit signs.
Yeah, same. It's been a huge learning curve for me this year, getting more in touch with the spiritual realm and understanding how it works, listening more to my intuition, trusting more what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling, and just really, honestly, it's just getting quiet, getting open, being willing to be patient and just, not doubt. Also, just trust that it's going to come. Trust that it's going to be there because, I'll ask for ridiculous things. I'll be like, show me a purple squirrel. And then like 2 days later, they show me a random purple squirrel and like a book that I'm reading to my daughter, just like
Yeah.
crazy.
I love that. I think it's so important to, like, for example, just before we close, I wanted to express this that was interesting is I wasn't asking for anything that's just happened. And that's another thing too, is sometimes we don't have to ask, right? Sometimes it just happens and we have to look at it and be like, oh, I saw that sign. Okay, I see it. But on the way to Boston, when last week when I was going, after my grandmother passed, I was on my way to Boston and on the plane ride, sitting beside me was a woman that was like my age, and she was not from the same town, but she was close enough, which was really random. And not only that, she was Portuguese. And my grandmother's Portuguese. And not only that, it was like more and more. She's like, I'm planning a trip to Portugal. Well, my sisters and I are planning a trip to Portugal. And she's like, well, guess what? My grandparents are 99 and 96. And I was like, oh my gosh, my grandmother just passed and she's 100. And she's like, and they live in a Portuguese community. I'm like, wait, where is this Portuguese community? Because that's where my family is from. And it wasn't the same one, but it was a good close. It was close enough to be like, this is wild. you know,
There's, people are like, oh, it's a coincidence. There are no coincidences in life. There are
not a
none.
chance. Not a
Not,
chance. Never do I sit down and talk to someone about their nationality, first of all. Like that
yeah.
doesn't ever happen, you know. That's not a thing. And I didn't even know she like it doesn't it was just so there's a sign right there that I'm just like, okay, that is too spirity. Oh my gosh. But yeah, the synchronicities is a good topic for sure because I love it. Love it.
It's been wild for me this year, really just like getting super duper in tune and seeing everything and realizing things that I was being shown years ago that I finally connected. Oh, like I get messages from songs a lot. Like I'll wake up with a song in my head. I'm like, okay, what's the message for this? And there was this song that I was singing all the time, and it's an old song from like the 60s and 70s that I would just sing it all the time. I was like, ooh, child, things are gonna get
I know
easy.
that song. Yeah.
And I had been hearing it through like a really hard time in my life, and it would just randomly pop in my head. I'm like, what is this? Who is this? And then I suddenly realized that it was my grandfather.
Oh
He was
wow.
the me. And then it's funny when I realized that I went to the bathroom and I just heard something like plunk onto the counter, and I whipped my head out and there was nothing there. And so it was like as soon as I realized I made that connection, I was like, oh, that's you. He was like, confirmed. Yeah, that was.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
That's
thought that.
wild. I love that.
Yeah, so like
Well,
you can be receiving signs for the longest time and not even realize it.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I love that so much. And I think that we touched base on the afterlife as much as we could cram in an hour.